You've got big projects to tackle, but your day gets swallowed up by repetitive tasks and constant inquiries. It's hard to make progress when you're stuck putting out fires. That's where Element 451's AI assistants come in. Acting like an extra set of hands, you get your time back for the high-impact projects. Ready to reclaim your time? Visit element451.com/AI team to learn more.
Welcome to AI for You, the go-to podcast for higher ed professionals looking to integrate AI into their daily work. I'm your host, Brian Piper, the Director of Content Strategy and Assessment at the University of Rochester. Join me every other Thursday for practical uses of AI within higher education communications, marketing, and student engagement. We'll focus on ways to quickly integrate AI into your teams to increase your efficiency and effectiveness and help you optimize your workflows and processes. I'll interview experts and feature relevant use cases with the goal that every episode gives you at least one thing you can take away and start leveraging in your job today. AI for You is a part of the Enrollify Network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com. Welcome to AI for You. In today's use case, we'll use AI to help us create titles and meta descriptions for our web pages. If you're creating website content, there's always that point where someone needs to come up with page titles and meta descriptions. Some institutions don't bother creating meta descriptions because Google will do it for you. And sometimes, even if you spend your time crafting the perfect meta description, Google might not even use that. Page titles matter for SEO. And meta descriptions can serve as the last call to action to let users know when they're searching what content is on your page and why they should visit. But you shouldn't spend lots of time writing this content when AI can do a great job with it. Give the tool your URL you want to create resources for, use the prompt in the show notes, and select your favorite option or use a combination of several options. I find this a huge time saver and use it so much that we've created a custom GPT out of the prompt. This whole episode is focused more on developers and coders, so be sure to forward this to your friends and coworkers who might benefit from it. Also, as with any podcast, we'd love it if you follow us to listen to more episodes. And if you get value from the show, feel free to leave a review on your favorite platform. And if you don't get value from the show, reach out and let me know. I love constructive criticism. Today, I'm excited to welcome Mike Miles, Director of Web Development at MIT Sloan. Mike brings over 20 years of experience in open source development and leads a team responsible for MIT Sloan's web presence. He's here to share insights on how they're using AI to enhance their development processes. Let's dive in. Mike, thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. So I went to your session at High Ed Web and you talked about, some of the different ways you're using AI to support coding and development at MIT. Can you talk a little bit about some of those ways?
My team at MIT Sloan, we're the web development team, right? So we manage the school's website, and our team is relatively small. And I think you find at higher ed institutions, either you have a really small web team or you have a really big web team if they're part of IT. We're part of communications, so we're a small team. And my team's great. I have some great developers, great QA, but always finding ways that we can optimize what we're doing and accelerate what we're doing. And so that's one of the things that we've been playing with AI and how it's been helping us do those things. Specifically, helping out with code generation and ideation for our projects and solutioning, solving bugs. It's been helpful there just to have those prompt conversations in our editors, just to be like, hey, what's causing this problem? What's wrong with this code? Or help me write code that does X, Y, and Z has been time saving for sure.
What are the primary like tools or resources that you're using?
Yeah, primarily my team uses GitHub Copilot with the VS Code plugin. It's been real helpful, and I'm liking it more now. They just announced some integrations with other models. So not just OpenAI's model, but you can start using Google's as well. And I believe MIT has like some agreements with like Microsoft as well to use their one. So if it opens up to there, then I'm going to see if I can switch over to use that. Then I don't have to pay for anything extra, which will always be good to, save that budget. And I can put that towards our computing costs for our
Yes,
deployments and whatnot.
absolutely. How would you say integrating AI into your processes has impacted either your productivity or your effectiveness in doing the code generation?
For my team, I think it's made a big difference. Differently for each individual, obviously, because it's still new. So people are getting used to using it. I've been liking it a lot. And one way I didn't think I would experience this, but helping with imposter syndrome. Because if you think about it as developers or anyone who has imposter syndrome, right? One of the things that makes it hard to do when you're not feeling confident in your capabilities is ask questions to other people. Be like, hey, I'm not understanding this. Can you help me out? There's hesitancy to do that. But if you're interacting with an AI, like I don't mind at all, even if I've been doing development for 20 years, to ask an AI agent, like, hey, help me figure out how to write a loop correctly and, PHP, right? I'm not going to feel judged by that because I can't think of it at the moment. So it's been helpful there because I can ask those questions without being concerned about what someone else is thinking about me. And that helps my confidence in my capabilities. And I hope my team's doing that as well. I see that because it's a lot longer until they come to me to ask for questions, which is always great. I mean, I'm happy to help them out. But knowing that they have these tools that they can immediately ask instead of spending hours searching the internet because they don't know what to do, has been a real game changer, I think, in our productivity.
Now, do you get together with your team and share different ways you're using the tools, or how do you make sure that you're all kind of staying up to speed with all the different advancements and changes that are happening?
Yeah, because that can be hard to, everything changes so quickly. One of the things we do as a team, which I think has been really helpful even before we had AI in working with it, is we do what we call peer programming every week. So that's where Wednesday afternoons, whole team jumps on Zoom and we take turns on who's leading. And we may do this for multiple people in one session. And it's like, hey, I'm working on this functionality today. I'm going to share my screen. We're going to go through it together. And one of the things that's helpful with that, for an example of what we just did this week when I was sharing my screen, is showing like, hey, I'm stuck on this problem. No one on the team really knows what to do. Let's quickly jump into Copilot and ask it some questions and see what it thinks. And you get different perspectives from everyone on the team to be like, oh, that's a good idea what it said there. Let's try that. Or, oh, that may not exactly work that way. And then using that as well with code generation in our editors to then what's fun about it with Copilot is we can write code comments as prompts. And then Copilot will print out the code that it thinks you want. It doesn't always get it right, but it gives you a good starting place and we can use that to work from. So I think sharing that and showing it, especially as being like the leader of the team, that it's okay to do this and to use these tools, it helps us, goes a long way of showing what we can do with it and what to keep trying and playing around with it, just in case people forget that it's there to use it.
Yeah, I mean, and so much of the conversation going on around these tools is, focused on text or images, and a lot of times I think that the coding part of the conversation gets lost. But I mean, these tools are really, in some ways, making all of us developers because now I can write Python code where
Yeah.
I couldn't do that before. Now I might not be able to run it, but I can at least generate it and give it to someone that can run it and put it into the IDE and make it work. But it's really empowering, I think, for a lot of people. And I think just the ability to learn new things, like if you're converting code from, Python to Rust or switching platforms or something like
Yeah.
that, I think it's really good at creating other opportunities. And you were saying that, I love the idea of these peer coding groups and bringing people together like that, because we tend to learn so much from watching other people because everyone comes to the work with a different perspective and they have slightly different ways that they use the tool. Uh, what have been some of the kind of most eye-opening things that you've seen other people do that have triggered like, oh yeah, that's a whole different way of doing that?
Yeah, there's been a number of things in terms of AI use in higher ed, and I like to think through how the development teams have come up with these things. One that comes immediately to mind is Ask Yale, which is by the Yale Sites team. So it's an AI powered chatbot that they have for students. I think it's mainly for students, and it uses a RAG model, so retrieval augmented generation. And what's cool about that is in read, I've seen some of their talks about it, and the development team talks about how they've integrated it into their websites and worked through the problems to get it to work effectively, so that the model uses just their data sets for building its responses as sources. So it's a more natural way for students. I think it's only for students at the moment to like ask the school for information on the web and then get it, like for dining information or class registration information or what have you. So I look at that, and my team, we don't do too much with students, but every website has search, right? And so I think about even looking at our data, like our analytics, our site search isn't used that often, but maybe if it's more integrated and natural, because if we can integrate tools like the way Ask Yale has, so that people coming to our site can ask these natural questions, and it can read through all the content of our site and source up here's like an explanation of what you're looking for, here's a link to that exact page. I think is really an exciting opportunity for the future.
And I think, using those RAG models tends to create less hallucinations because they're
Yeah.
just, focusing on your content. So I think that's great.
And I've played around with those just a little bit locally, like with our user guide for our website, because we have over 100 site editors for everyone around MIT Sloan. And so I was trying to play around with a RAG model, be like, well, if it can consume our user guide, how can we give that to editors to let them ask questions? Because no one wants to read a technical guides on how to use the tool. They just want to ask the right questions. We haven't built anything to release that, but starting to play around with it as opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've talked with several different groups at different conferences. What do you see or what do you hear are some of the biggest challenges in integrating AI into the development processes from other schools?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that I've hear a lot. A lot of higher ed institutions that I've talked with, like they're developing AI guidelines for use, but it's mainly around how students can use it or faculty can use it for course data, which totally valid. Those are the biggest part of the community that you want to focus on. And the development teams are usually really small. But then you're a little weary as a development team, like what tools can I use? What tools can't I use? And how can I use this? Because it's not really captured. You're not writing content to put out there on the web. You're using it for under the hood stuff that no one's going to see, but how much of it can you rely on? What can you give to it as data? So that's the biggest thing, is carving out guidelines that are specific for your use case. And at MIT Sloan, I've worked with our IT department who's coming up with central IT for these guidelines. I've asked questions like, hey, can we use this tool? Here's what we want to do with it. Here's how our information touches other systems at the school. Is this okay? And I think asking those questions is the first step to overcome those challenges with establishing those sort of guidelines.
Talking about first steps, what do you recommend to developers who aren't doing much with AI yet? How do you get started, like integrating these tools into your workflows and processes?
Yeah, the first place is just to test it, just to play around with AI. I think there's a lot of hesitancy, and I understand that, right? New technology can be scary. And but I think the problem is, as a developer, you need to think about what's not working now, but what's going to work in the future. Like I just read an article that just came out from The Verge about how 25% of Google's code is now generated by AI. And if Google's doing that, everyone's going to be doing that. There's going to be a lot of AI generated code out there. So in the future, it's something you're going to have to know how to use. It's something you're going to have to know how to do. So just even being familiar with it is going to help you. So even if you're not going to integrate it right now into your processes, understanding how to interact with these tools is only going to benefit you as a developer later when you do have to use it, right? So it's not brand new to you're not left behind in your development career. And I think if you can pull it in, say like GitHub Copilot is a great example. It's really easy if you use VS Code or another IDE, um, say like JetBrains, that you can connect it and start using it very lightly. You can configure it so that you can just ask it prompts or it can help generate code. And what I see the value there is that it really frees up time for critical thinking. Because again, if you're working in higher ed and you're a small team, there's a lot of stuff you have to handle. And your responsibility isn't to know all the ins and outs of all your frameworks. It's about how to produce something for, let's say, for the web that represents the school and its values and the content it wants to push out there. So the more you can have time to think at that higher level and then use these tools to help you generate the code to do that, the more value you're delivering to the school in your role.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know from my previous life as a developer that a lot of times you end up inheriting code from other developers or having to work on code from other developers. And these tools can do a great job of like explaining the frameworks and the fundamentals about, what the code is doing and how it might be interacting so that you can, then at least approach it from a knowledgeable standpoint about what you're changing and what impact that might have.
Yeah, especially with the stacks nowadays, especially for web development, like you're pulling repos and tools from other places, third party, especially if you work in open source. And if something's not working correctly and you can't parse through it, if it's minimized code, minified code, you can feed that into your AI tool and be like, explain what this is doing. And it doesn't care if it's one letter character variables, like it's going to explain to you what the functionality is doing because code's all full of patterns and these tools are really great at recognizing patterns. So it can help explain it to you.
Yeah, and I heard somebody else talking about the fact that you can use them to like add comments into code because a lot of times, coders won't put in the comments as they're going through because they're just, in the work. So then these tools can do a lot of that functionality for you. So that's a huge time saver.
Yeah. And that's why I like it with the Copilot integration where you can write prompts as code comments because then you're commenting your code and documenting it with your code prompt with your prompts about what it generates, and then it does usually a good job of also commenting the code that it puts out for you, so you don't have to worry about having these huge code blocks of generated code that you don't know what it's doing. It's going to explain it to you, which is very helpful.
That's huge. It's giving you basically a roadmap of what it is the code is doing and how it's working. That's great. What are some of the more interesting use cases you've seen or heard from other developers, well, either on the development or not on the development side?
One thing I know about, and this is from MIT, there's a product called Stack AI. I think it's stack-ai.com. And it's a no-code platform that allows people to build AI-powered applications for like courses. And I think that's really powerful. And it's a bunch of MIT PhDs put it together with, I think, direction from like MIT IT and support from there. But it's part of the Classrooms of the Future initiative about how can we use these tools to build out what students need in the future. And I think obviously the thinking behind building these no code solutions to then generate AI tools is really interesting. And that's like the next evolution. Even for developers, I see that as well, is that using these sort of thinking through that process of, again, you don't have to know the nitty gritties to write something. You have to be able to think of the ideas that need to be done. And it opens up the world to who can be a developer and who can implement these things, because it removes that barrier of having to know those years and years of building up that knowledge. Not that that's not important. It is, because you don't want a bunch of script kiddies generating everyone's code. But yeah, like stack AI so that, future faculty can produce tools that help teach their courses in a more efficient way is, I think it's an amazing idea.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen, some examples like just with Claude's artifacts where you can just tell it like, simple games and stuff like that, and it'll create all the code for you and run it in the window and you can test it. But I imagine we're not far from where you can just tell it, the entire app that you want to create or the entire software package that you want to create, and it'll just go build it for you.
Yeah. I mean, we're going to get there one day. And I think that also scares a lot of developers because they think, oh, this is a replacement for me. And I don't think that's ever going to be the case. You're not going to ever replace a human developer. I think it's just a new tool to learn how to leverage and use to help you build these things. And I ask developers to think who are hesitant to use these tools now, before there are higher level languages, everyone had to know like assembly code. You had to know the nitty gritties of how to do bitwise operations. And we got higher level languages, so you don't need to know that anymore. We got, version control tools and autocompletes and linters, so you don't have to know all that. It's just another extension of that, the next evolution of that. You still have to know, again, that critical thinking and how to problem solve and ask the AI how to generate the code for you. But you don't have it, it just removes that barrier, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're always telling, other content creators and marketers the same thing. You still need the expertise to drive the AI and to validate and to make sure that, it's taking the right actions and going down the right path. But it's going to remove a lot of that, monotonous kind of grinding work that we do that none of us should really have to do if we have technology that can do that for us.
Yeah, because if you would leave it all to the marketing team, you're going to have someone ask the AI, like, I need a flashy banner that scrolls across the page. Because you don't have the developer to be like, whoa, wait. What actually are you trying to accomplish? Let's think if there's a better way to do that.
Right?
Right? Because,
Yeah.
The AI will probably be able to put that up for you. That doesn't mean it's a great thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. You still need the quality control. You need, someone to tell you the logo just can't be bigger.
Right.
We know this technology is changing rapidly. Where do you see things going? I was asking people in the next 2 to 3 years. I think it's even hard for us to even imagine what it's going to be like that far out. Just even in the next like 6 months to a year, where do you see this going, and how critical is it for institutions and other developers to start integrating these tools into their processes?
Yeah, as I mentioned, there's that article about how much code Google's now generating with AI, and we're only going to see that more integrated under the hood of these systems and these processes and these tools. Like there's already an IDE called Cursor that is built as an AI first IDE, so you're mainly interacting through prompts to generate your code. So I think we're going to see that sooner rather than later about having these built into your tools so that they're assisting you with writing this code. But even I think we can step forward to 2 to 3 years in the future, and how web development teams in higher ed are thinking about how these tools are going to be used, because it's all in how we structure the data that we produce on our websites or in our applications, right? When we first wrote websites and we had the internet, people were writing content that was being output for humans to consume, and it was being structured for humans to consume. Nowadays, and for the last decade or so, output is still being done for humans to consume it, but the structure of our code is for search engines to consume it, right? We are writing semantic markup so that when someone goes to search for information, our pages come up correctly. But I think relatively soon in the next few years, what we're going to see is we're going to be structuring our content for LLMs and are the output so that's easy for AI to consume and for humans to understand. So that's going to completely change how we're thinking about our markup and our structure of our data, because we want these LLMs to consume it so that when people, I think OpenAI just launched ChatGPT with search, and Google, obviously, when you search on Google now, it has like the AI search results at the top. So you want your results to be in there. So we're going to think about how do we structure our data and use our tools to structure our data so that AI can really consume it in a way. And I think marketing teams, especially communication teams looking to reach prospective students or alumni, are really going to have to pay attention to that. And that translates into what the dev team does.
Yeah, I talk a lot about SEO and the importance of, SEO is no longer just optimizing your website content. It's really trying to get your content distributed into all the right channels. But like you said, there's a technical aspect to that too, to make sure that on all those channels, it is as discoverable and as indexable, and that all these AI tools can come through and capture your data and understand it in the best way possible, so that it will serve your content up to those users, however they're searching for it. So I
Yeah.
think that's critical.
Right. And there's a lot of expertise out there for how to optimize your content for SEO. And I'm fully sure we're gonna see that emerge for how to optimize your content for search, for LLM consumption and for tokenization.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we just started, setting up a lot of our dashboards so that we're tracking and reporting on traffic we are getting from AI search engines, along with the regular organic traffic that we're tracking. Because as we're seeing our organic traffic go down from Google, we're seeing our organic traffic increase from AI tools. So
Yeah, we just started pulling some of those metrics as well from our analytics person. Just shared some of that as the other week. I didn't even know we were tracking that, and I was really interested to see how that how our traffic's coming from those AI tools like ChatGPT.
absolutely. One of the questions I always ask everyone is, what are some of the ways, and I know you've talked about some of these, but what are the ways that are having the most impact on your workflows from AI tools? Like, where are you seeing the biggest time savings, or where are things that, like, if AI went away tomorrow, things that you would miss the most?
Yeah, the most time saving thing for me and my team is with that code ideation and problem solving. Because before it, like if you're stuck on a problem, you're spending, an hour to a whole day or multiple days looking for solutions, finding, Stack Overflow results from 2013 and see if those solutions still work. Uh, and now, when we're stuck on a problem, like I mainly first go to an AI tool like Copilot or ChatGPT and ask the questions there to be like, hey, how can I solve this? And I can give you a very specific example that just happened this week where we use a lot of automated tests for all our code deployments, and we have to pass all the automated tests, including behavior driven tests before we can deploy anything. And we do that in Circle CI, which is an automated deployment tool. And we just upgraded our main website to Drupal 10. And after that, in our Circle builds, even our nightly regression builds that run our test suite, they would randomly fail. And they started randomly failing. And this was problematic because our test suite takes like 40 minutes to run. And if it fails for a week, our solution was to rerun it and see if the race condition isn't getting hit. And I was like, all right, this is using all our build minutes. It's slowing down our development process. I have to figure out what's going on here. And I know enough, but I was still getting stuck on the problem because I couldn't reproduce it. So I worked with a AI agent called the Drupal Droid, which is a ChatGPT custom ChatGPT because we're working in Drupal. And this was for our BHAT testing language. And I said, all right, it's failing. My BHAT tests are failing because it's skipping past Ajax responses before they complete. Help me rewrite these steps to work with Drupal 10 because it's brand new. And it took me through the process of writing my own BHAT definition for a step definition that correctly listens for an Ajax response in Drupal 10, which is different than Drupal 9 and previously. And so in a day, I had a new step definition running that then all my tests were passing in Circle CI. So that was saving my team a tons of time. We deployed it earlier this week, and I could happily tell my team, like, hey, you don't have to worry about having to rerun your builds 3 times to get them to pass. Like, it should work now. And that would have taken me so much longer to solve. Like, it would take me a whole week to solve if I didn't have an AI tool.
Right. Are you tracking the time savings at all from some of your different AI tasks?
No, I should figure out a way to do that, especially as someone I love spreadsheets. So I should figure out how to do that. I should probably work with an AI tool to ask how can I track that stuff efficiently, because I think that's kind of that's hard metric, right? Because I can be like, it took me this long working with AI, but I can't go back and be like, let me try to do that again without it and see how
Right.
long it would take me to come with a solution. So I wonder, I would love to figure out a great way to track that time saving without just estimating it.
Yeah, and I know I do that for some like repetitive, like a process that I'll do every month, that's usually kind of a typical same amount of time. So that's been one way that, I've been able to track it. But yeah, a lot of those processes, by the time you've completed it using one method, then, you can't really go back and effectively track it using the other method.
Right.
You mentioned custom GPTs. Are you creating custom GPTs specifically for coding?
Not specifically for the work that my team does. I did create one for the Drupal community because I do a lot of Drupal development called the Drupal Droid, which I just did it because I wanted. It was when ChatGPT first came out with these custom GPTs, and I wanted to test it out because I love testing the new technologies. And I was like, oh, what's something I could do? Let me pre-prompt it to answer questions about Drupal. And it turns out it's very useful. And I was at a conference early, in New York. We were at Evolve Drupal, and someone's like, "Oh, have you used this?" I was like, "Oh, actually, I created that." And they're like, "Oh, I love using it. It helps me so much." I was like, and that's great to hear. I thought I just made it, and no one was really using it except for myself. To know it's helping other people has been very humbling.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, for coming on the show and sharing some of your insights with us. And if other people want to reach out to you and get in touch with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
The best way for people to do that was probably go to my website, mike-miles.com. And then from there, you can find like my LinkedIn connection information. I'm not really on social media, so that's the best way to do it. Or come to one of the many conferences I tend to go to speak at, which from my website, you can find a list of my upcoming talks. And then I'm happy to talk about these things or anything related to web development.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Having started my career as a website developer more than 30 years ago, I loved this discussion about the practical applications of AI in development. Mike's perspective on using AI to combat imposter syndrome and his team's collaborative approach to learning these tools offer valuable lessons for any development team. His insights about the evolution of web content structure, from human focused to search engine optimized to AI ready, give us a glimpse of where we need to be heading. The key takeaway is that AI isn't replacing developers. It's empowering them to focus on higher level problem solving while it handles the more routine coding tasks. Please reach out to me with unique ways that you're integrating AI into your professional and personal lives. And as always, blue skies and keep creating. Thank you for listening to another episode of AI for You. I hope you found at least one useful thing you can take away and start adding to your workflows and processes today. Remember, the key to making the most of AI is to keep experimenting, keep learning, and of course, keep creating. AI for You is a part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month, and we've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to become a better higher ed professional. Our shows help higher ed professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Artis Kadu, Dave Kibbles, Shane Baglini, and so many other of your favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful and personalized interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.